Are you able to see my screen, right, guys? Can someone confirm? Are you able to see or not? Yeah. Thank you. So today we are going to start the types of variable. The last classes we have discussed about only three classes. Okay, not well. Introduction, language fundamentals. Out of that, we have discussed identifiers and then arrays and primitive data types. Those things we have discussed. Now the next part is as part of the language fundamentals. We have types of variables, vararg methods, command line, and Java coding standards. Okay. Now today we'll start types of variables. We'll start it. Okay. Uh, yeah. So types of variables means, let's say for example, let's say for example, so already primitive data types we have discussed, right? So primitive data types are like how many types of primitive data types are there, guys? How many types? Int, byte, okay, short, short, int, long, okay, float, double, and what else? Char, boolean. Sure, not, guys? This is there. So is everyone is my previous class is joined, right? Okay. Now today these are the data types, right? So we call it as a primitive types also. Okay, we'll call all these are primitive types. Okay, along with this, to represent any value, let's say for example, if 100 value is there, in my 100 or 1000 value is there, so this is of type integer, correct or not? Then in that case, we can create one variable int a equal to 1000. You'll store one variable inside this variable, that 1000 value. Okay, if it is a decimal value means, then we should take which one, which data type? Let's say 123.45. Then which data type variable I should consider now? Double. Okay, if you are not giving anything, then we should treat it as a double. Okay, double d. Okay, if it is a float, if you are giving as a float means, then if it is a float compulsory, if you want compulsory, if you want to convert it as a float means, then we need to give as okay, f at the end. Otherwise by default it will consider as a double variable. Okay, like this, these are for the variables, some numbers and some character, single character, some true or false. These are the data types. Okay, and if you want to go for some object, okay, what is object, what is class? So class means, I told you in the initial class, it is a real time entity. It contains of, class is a one real time entity. It contains of methods and variables, methods and variables. So all combined we will call it as a one class. Okay, let's say for example, class, if you want to, let's assume you want to add two variables, just assume. Okay, add is a one class. Okay, inside this class I'll write one method. I'll write public void add of int a comma int b. Okay, inside this I want to add up two numbers. Okay, so to pass these two values, let's say I'm taking of two numbers. Let's I equal to 10. Okay, int int j equal to 20. Okay, so I want to pass these two values to this method and calculate the sum of these two numbers. Okay, then in this case I can say these two are the variables. These two are variables. Then this add is a method or function. Okay, to call this method, this is of non-static method. So if we don't have a static keyword or Static keyword is not there in the method signature. Method signature, if it is not there, if static keyword is not there in the method signature means, then we can consider that as a non-static method. Okay. To call any non-static method, compulsory we need object. Okay. Compulsory we need object. How to create object? How to create object means, simple way is, normally we need to take the class name. Okay. Class name, and give some variable name. Give some variable name, let's say small a. Okay, given any name you can give it. Okay. Equal new, it is a operator. New is a operator to create object of any class. Any class. Okay. And give of add. Okay. This is of object creation for add class. This is of object creation for add class. Okay. So whatever the variables and methods present in this add class, we can call by using a variable called a. By using a variable called, oh, already same variable as you, for confusion, let's say x. Okay. So the variables and methods of add class, the variables and methods of add class we can call by using a variable called x. By using a variable called x, we will call this as a reference variable, not primitive. These are primitive variables. This is a reference variable. So the object of any class, we will call it as a reference of a variable. Reference variables, not a primitive variables. The primitive variables are only if you are giving of type is this type you are giving for any variable, then we will call it as a primitive variable. Okay. Apart from that, if you are giving of any other things, we will call it as a reference variable. So the object of class we will call it as a, this is object. Okay. So whatever that is part of this add class. Okay. Methods and variables, we can refer and we can call by using a object. Okay. We will call this as a reference variable. Now we'll see practically now. Okay. Now let's take off any class. Just before going to that, I'm explaining what exactly class, what exactly method and variables. Okay. And how exactly we are going to call them. Now let's take off class add. Simply, I don't want to just, or else how to create means, once you created a project, right click on the, once you have created project, go to src, under src create package, or else directly under src also you can create the class. Go to new, go to class, give add. Okay, one class name I'm giving, just click on finish. Now the class is created. Now let's say create one two variables. Int a equal to 100. Okay. Int b equal to 200. Give some two variables. Okay. And if you want to give a, write one method. Okay. Public void add of int x comma int y. Okay. Now number print enough. I want to print out those sum. Okay. Yeah. Sum is, okay, sum of x and y is, okay, sum of x and y is now x plus y. Okay. It will print that. So how to call this one, how to execute this method? So this is a non-static method. This is a non-static method, so compulsory we need object. So execution start from where exactly? The always java execution will start from main method. Execution will start from always main method. What is the signature of signature means this one? Okay, and the method name, return type, and access specifier. What is the signature of a main method means? Just public static void main. I'm giving shortcuts, it will generate that code. So public static void main, and this is the argument type, string argument types. I'll explain more clear about. There is a separate class for main method. Okay, for time being. So every execution of every class, execution will start from main method only. Okay, inside this main method only we need to create a object of add class, and we need to call this add method. Okay, add method, or for maybe it is not compulsory to give up class name and method name is same, otherwise some people may have some confusion. Okay, for that I change it to method name is sum. Okay, now I'm going to create object of add class. To call this sum method, i'm I'm going to create add a equal to new add. Okay, again there is a separate class for constructors. Okay, this will call it as a add open bracket and close bracket, this will call it as a constructor, default constructor. Okay, for that also separate class is there. This is of one line for object creation to call of any variables or methods present in the add class. Okay, now this is the line that we have created object. Okay, now in this class, this is of primitive variables. Okay, primitive variables, this will call it as a reference variable. Okay, now system.out.println of if I want to call off this method. Okay, or if I want to display of these two variables, then okay, here also a, right? Mm, here give up some different variable names, comma j. Okay, now if I want to display of these two variables and call of this method, then we need to give off a dot. This one is the object. Okay, inside this class, this is the blueprint of this. Actually, whatever that a, it can add method contains, add class contains of variables and method, it contains of this a variable. Okay, internal it contains of a variable. Okay, now if a dot refers, it contains, it will give, it will show all the things whatever that is present. If you want to print out I variable, okay, a dot I. If you want to print off j variable, then a dot j. Okay, if you want to call up some method, a dot sum, a dot sum of, it is taking of two arguments. It is taking of two arguments. What type of arguments it is taking? What type of arguments it is taking, guys? It is taking of arguments type is int type of two variables it is taking, right or not? Now let's we need to pass off two variables. Okay, let's say some 25 comma 35. Okay, then internally it will check for is there any method is available in this add class with the two parameters type of int type. Okay, if that method is there, then it will call that method, it will execute of that lines whatever that is present inside this method. Okay, now let's run it. In this line it will print off the 100, in this line it will print off the value 200, in this line it will call up the sum method or function. Okay, now let's run it. How to run means right click, run as, and Java application. Okay, now see, the first value is printed off 100, the second value is printed off 200. So if I'm commenting this line, then it will not print off 200. Okay, through that object reference. See, only 100 is printing this line. Okay. So in this case, this is the variables, guys. This is the method. Now, now go to document. Now we'll go to document. Now see. Now let's read it. Based on the type of value represented. Type of value represented. So in case of primitive types, it is a numbers means then we can go for primitive types. Right or not? Then those will call it as primitive data types. Primitive variables. Primitive variables. Okay, if the values is not based on the integer and float numbers are not based on characters, then if it is a object type, if it is a object, then we can call it as a reference variables. We'll call it as a reference variables. Okay. Now again we are see that example of the primitive variables is in text equal to 10. If it is a reference variable means I'm giving up some example, employee s equal to new employee. In the same way, in our current case, what we have taken, add a equal to new add. Okay, or else you can take up one more example, add a equal to new add also. One example for reference variable, then this will call it as reference variable. S and A are reference variables. Okay. Now again, primitive data types are divided into three. Again, primitive data types, all variables declarations are divided into again three types. So depends on the context, depends on the place where exactly we are declaring the variables. Okay, depends on the place where exactly we are declaring the variables. Based on that, we are dividing again into three types. Okay, local variables, okay, static variables, and instance variables. Okay, what is instance variables? What is instance variables means? What is instance variables means? The variables that are present, the variables that are present inside a class and outside of a method. Inside class, inside class, and outside of a method, and outside of a method. This is a method. Okay, I have declared two variables, right? So I can call these two variables as instance variables. Instance variables. Okay, I can call those two variables as instance variables. See that, read that. Instance variables, if a value of a variable is varied from object to object. Okay, value of a variable is, sorry, value of a variable is changed from object to object. Okay, and if a value of a variable is, so let's say if I'm creating, in this case, if I want to set the value for the I is, I can set different value also. Okay, let's say this is of one object. Let's say create of one more object, a1. Okay, I want to change the a1 dot I equal to 500. Okay, a1 dot I, in this case the value of I is printing as 100 in this object a. So in the object of a1, I'm changing that value of I to 500. Okay, the value will change. If you want to change the value of a any variable from object to object, then we'll call it as a instance variables. Okay, that instance variables we can refer by using a object. We can refer by using object. Now let's go to and read the first point. If a value of a variable, if a value of a variable is from varied from object to object, the value of I is changed from object of A to object of A1. Okay, so then I can say this value is I is of type instance variables. Of type is instance variables. Next, so for every object, a separate copy of instance variables will be created in the memory. So how exactly it will be created in the memory in the internal heap memory means, let's say it is of whenever we are whenever we are creating a line of add a equal to new add. Okay, in this case, how exactly in the heap memory, in the heap memory it will create a form. Let's say this is a heap memory total. In this case, internally it will create of one object for a class. Okay, for a variable it will create of some memory. Okay, it will create of a variable. Inside it contains of its own variables. What add class contains? Add class contains of add class contains I. Okay, I equal to 100, and one more is of I equal to, sorry, j equal to 200, right? Apart from these two, what it contains, some method is also available. Okay, some method is also available. It can take off 2 into I x comma into y. Contains of like this every object, it contains. Yeah, this is a object. A object contains its own variables and method. Let's say if you are creating of one more object for the same class, then it has its own again separate variables and methods. Again it will create in the second line. So it will create a one more object with a1 in the memory. Okay, with a1 it will create up one more variable with separate memory again. Okay, it contains again its own variables and methods. So a I equal to, in this case, what we did, I'm changing that value to 500. I'm changing, before case it is of 100. In this case, it is setting that value to 500, and j value is 200 only. Next, sum method with int x comma int y. Okay, so whenever you are calling of through a1 object, through a1 object, I value will come as 500. If you are calling through a object, the I value will come as 100. Okay, so that's where this point will come into. So if the value of variable is varied from object to object, such type of variables will called as a instance variables. Okay, and every object every object have its own every object have its own copy, separate copy of instance variables. In this case, in case of a object, it is having its own copy. So in case of a1 object, it has its own copy of I and j. Okay, but both are not same. It will create a separate copy for every, let's say assume of if I'm creating of one more object, I'm creating of add of a3. Okay, a3 equal to new add of a3 dot I equal to 1000 if I'm setting. Okay, 1000 if I'm setting system dot out dot println. If I'm printing a3 dot I means it will print off 1000 value. In this case, it will print off a1. Okay, now give up some message a1 object I value. Okay, next a3 object a3 object I value. Now let's print it. See, a1 value of what happened, sorry, here a1. Let's run it. See, a1 value of I is a1 object I value is 500. So a3 object I value is 1000. So the value of instance variable we can change from object to object. Okay, and it will copy of internally, it will copy of separate memory. In the memory it will create separate objects also, the memory also. Okay, for each object. Next point. Next, instance variables should be declared. Instance variables should be declared within the class directly. Within the class directly, but outside of any method. Outside of methods or block or constructor. Now, what is block and what is constructor? You may have some doubt. Okay, so this is a method. Okay, and if this is a block, this is will call it as a block, only open bracket and close bracket, then we can say it is a block. Okay, now the constructor means same name. Okay, class name must be same and give of the class name, then we can say it is a constructor. It's a constructor, will call it as a constructor. Default, yeah, use default constructor. Okay, now if any values we are giving means, then we can call it as a parameterized constructor. Okay, now in this line, whenever we are executing in this line, internally it will call up that constructor. If we are not adding this one, then internally compiler will add default constructor if we are not adding any constructor in the class. Okay, if you are not explicitly specifying the constructor, then automatically default constructor will be executed, default constructor will be added by compiler. Now let's say in this case, always three times we have created object, one, okay, two and three. So now three times this message will come. Okay, now let's see, run it. See, default constructor is executed at the time of a object creation. One more time, default constructor is executed at the time of a1 object creation. One more time at the time of a3 object creation also, the default constructor is called. Okay, if we are not adding that method, sorry, constructor, then automatically compiler will add this default constructor. Okay, but not parameterized constructor, guys. Okay, now next, go to next point. Instance variables will be created at the time of instance variables will be created at the time of object creation and destroyed at the time of object destruction. Okay, so when this instance variables will be created in the object means at the time of line, at the time of object creation, at the time of object, this is the object creation line. Okay, object creation line for add class. Okay, how many times we are created? One, two and three. Three times we are created object. So for internally it is creating of three memories. Internally it is creating of three memories for three objects, a1 and for a3. Okay, all it has its own memory, all it has its own variables, method and values. Okay, and whenever it is, when these delete means at the time of JVM, if you are not giving of active reference, if you are not using those objects, automatically JVM will delete those objects from the memory. Okay, automatic, that is not our responsibility, it will take care of JVM to delete of those unused objects. Our work is only wherever it is required, the objects we will create it. If it is not using means, then automatically JVM will delete. Automatically JVM will delete unused objects from the memory. Okay. Next, let's see, will be stored in the heap memory. Second, destruction. Yeah, read it again if you want. So instance variables will be created at the time of object creation. Okay, at the time of object creation, all those instance variables will be created inside a object. Okay, and destroyed at the time of object destruction. Okay, destruction means object deleting from the memory. Hence the scope of the instance variables is exactly same as scope of object. Whenever, so these variables will be alive until, these variables will be alive until as long as this object is present in the memory. Okay, the scope of these variables is also, it is of scope of the object. Okay, until whatever the time that object is available, this variables also will be present in the memory. That is the scope of any variables. Next, the instance variables will be stored in the, instance variables will be stored in the heap memory. Okay, instance variables will be stored in heap memory as part of the object. All the objects whatever we are creating, right, a1 and a3, all these objects will be created inside heap memory only. Okay, next, we can access by using, how to access those variables, guys? Okay, how to access these variables inside this object, a1 object, we have I, j and some method is there. How to access this variable I and j? How to access the variables of I and j inside this a1 object? Through a1 reference. Through a1 reference. Through a1 reference, we can access them. That's what the this point. Okay, so instance variables will be stored inside the heap memory as part of object, but we can access by using object reference. Okay, now we can't access the instance variables directly from static area, and we can access the instance variables directly from, can access instance variables directly from instance area or heap area. Okay, now what is mean by directly? Okay, from static area means, let's take up one example. If it is a static method, if this method is static method, then to make this non-static method to static method means, just we need to declare as static, just we need to declare as static. Then in this case the object is not required. This line of, these lines are not required. Directly we can access the class name dot method name, class name dot method name. Let's say we'll take up one more example, more example, or we can make it all variables and methods as static. Let's make it static. Static. Okay, sorry, not here, we need to keep before static variables. So now in this case, in this case we no need of a constructor, we no need of object creation also. Okay, directly through class name we can access it. Let's comment it. Let's comment it. Now if I want of if I want of add any variable, system.out.println add dot, see, all are coming in before case. Through object only we can see of those variables and methods. Now let's see this one, system.out.println add dot j. Okay, one call of method also add dot some method pass of some 25 comma 45. Okay, so I didn't create of any object in this case. Directly I'm calling. If it is a static variable, static method means we no need to create of object. Okay, now let's run it. See, even in this case also all these are, see, I have commented this code guys all, but still through static context area I am calling that by using of static variables. Okay, now the next part is static variables only. Okay, now is it clear guys what is instance variables means? What is instance variables? The variables that are present inside a class and outside a methods, those variables will called as a instance variables. Will called as a instance variables. How to access the variables? Instance variable means by using object. Okay, and the values will vary from object to object also. The instance variables values will vary from object to object. And but in case of static area, only one copy will be created in the stack area. Okay, in the static area. Okay, but in case of non-static variables inside heap memory, multiple copies are created. But if it is a variable is static means only one copy will be created in the memory. Okay, how many number of times you are calling, only the same copy will return. Okay, let's say even add of create a1 new add of. Okay, now create one more a1 dot I equal to 200. Okay, now create one more object if you want. This is of I duplicate variable somewhere where we created a1 object. Let's change it to b1. Okay, now inside this b1 dot I equal to, that is of static context, so we can't set this value. So let's say, let's add it. I variable declared as expected after this token, that token. That's 1 second guys. Static variable only, right? Yeah. So it won't setting of any values. So it is of static context. Anytime if you want to get the data also, only one copy is stored. But in case of before case, every time it is creating a separate copy. But in this case, only one copy will be created in the static area. If you are modifying that value means, then always that value will change for in all the places. In all the places, it will impact that. Okay, let's say for example add dot I equal to, okay, 500. Already 500, let's say 300. Okay, now wherever we are using of this variable, wherever we are using this I, all places it will impact to 300. Okay, all places now it is of 100. Okay, wherever we are using that, in all places only one copy will be stored in the memory, not like three copies. In that case, let's say for example in this case, how many number of times you are modifying that value. Okay, now always that value will be, if first time it is of 100. Okay, now let's I equal to, initially it is of 100. Now later if I'm changing to 300 means, always directly it will remove that. Okay, and it will replace to 300. It will replace that 100 to 300. Okay, but not like, it won't create of new copy. It won't create a new copy. The existing value only will be replaced in case of static context. Okay, how to create static variable means, we need to give off static keyword to the variables and methods. To variables and methods. Yeah, for instance variables, for instance variables, JVM will always provide default values. If we are not giving, if we are not giving these two values in case of previous case, just assume instance variables, create one, guys, add a equal to new dot 21 a dot I. If I am not giving values here, okay, by default, what is the integer default value, guys? What is the integer default value if you are not giving any value? At the time of primitive data types, I have explained that integer default value is 0. Integer default value is 0. Yes. So if you're not giving any value to that variables, if you're not assigning any value to this variables, then defaultly the 0 value will be assigned based on the type. Based on type, it will see 0 and 0. Okay. If it is a float means, if it is a float, float. Okay. Now see that it will change that value 0 0.0. Okay, like that it will assign some if you are not giving any value to the variables. So at the time of object creation, the default values will be assigned to the variables. We no need to, if you are missing also, default value will be assigned by the JVM. Okay, that's what this point is, last point. Okay, now in example also I have given for 4 variables. If you want, see, add up one more class if you want, default, default init. So class created one class, and I have created one integer variable, one double variable, float variable, and one static string variable also. Okay, now create object of this class, get that values, default values will be assigned. Now now let's run it. See, if you are not giving any values also, I didn't give any values, I didn't initialize any value for these variables, but still some values are displaying. These values are assigned by, these values are assigned by JVM at the time of object creation line. At this line internally it will create the object, and for these values, if the values are not assigned, then JVM will assign default value for this variables. Okay, that's what this point. Next, static variables. Static variables is just like instance variables only, it will small context will change. If the value of a variable is not varied, not varied from object to object, okay, for all objects same value will come in case of static variables. Okay, it is not recommended to declare those type of variables as instance variables. If the value is strict, only one value if you want to maintain for all the objects, then we should not declare those variables as, we should not declare those variables as, those variables as static. Okay, compulsory we need to declare those variables are static instead of instance variables. Okay, so com- yeah, oh, sorry, if the value of variable is not varied from object to object, then we should not declare those variables as instance variables. Compulsory would declare as static variables. Then in that case only one copy will be created in the memory, that copy only will save for all objects. Okay, now we have to declare such type of variables as at class level using static modifier. Okay, in case of instance variables, for every object, in case of instance variables, for every object, a separate copy will be created, right? In case of instance variables, every object, separate copy will be created. But in case of okay, will be created, but in case of static variables, a single copy will be created at class level, okay, and said that to every class, said that to every object of the class. If you are creating 10 objects also for that class, for 10 objects, single copy will be created. That copy only will refer by all objects, okay. That's what the meaning of the second point. Next, static variables should be declared within the class directly, outside of any method or class and constructor. Like this only whatever we discussed, within the class and outside of methods. Outside of methods. Okay, this is a method, main method. Outside of this methods only, any method. Okay, we need to declare outside of methods within the class or constructor or block. Okay, so this is of we'll call it as a non-static block. Non-static block. If I am keeping here as a static keyword means, then it will become a static block. Okay, without static keyword, if the open and close bracket is there means, then I can call it as a non-static block. If the static keyword is added to the open bracket and close bracket, then we can say it is a static block. Okay, static block. Static variables will be created at the time of class loading, at the time of class loading, and destroyed at the time of class unloading. Okay, so as long as the class is available in the memory, static memory, that variable we can be accessed. Okay, the scope of the static variables is like exactly same as class level, class file. So until whatever the time the class is available in the memory, until that we can access those variables, the scope is also same. Okay, now how exactly it will load the static variables means, so first it will load up the class, load the class by jvm. At the time of execution time, first step will be jvm will load the class. Okay, so these are the steps it will follow internally. First it will start off jvm, and it will search for the class, the class whatever that we are giving, it will search for that class in which package it is available, where exactly the class file is available. First it will search for that class, and then it will load up that class, whatever that class that is there. Let's say add class is there. If it is a static means, static and static, then static. So first it will load, first start the JVM, and it will search for where exactly this add file is there, add class is there in the package. We can create a hundreds of packages. It will search where exactly this class is available. Okay. Next, it will load up once it is available. Then it will load up that add class. Okay. Next, it will execute of main method only. It will execute of main method. Wherever that main method is there, it will execute that main method. Inside that, object creation, method calling, variable declaration, everything, variable initialization. If you want to modify the variables or calling, everything we can do inside main method only. The JVM will execute only main method. Okay. Next, unload. Once the main method is completed, then it will unload for the class. Unload that test class, and it will set down of JVM. This is the way it will start the JVM, locate the file, and execute loading of the class, execution of main method, unloading, and shutdown of JVM. These are the steps internally. It will followed by the JVM to at the time of executing the class. Okay. Next point, let's go on see that. This is a example. If you want, we can take the example. We'll take off that is done. I'm replacing here with now. See, this is a static variable. Okay, so without static means it is an instance variable. If static keyword is there for the variable means it is a static variable. How to refer this static variable means, so by using a object also we can refer, by using class name also we can refer, or by using directly also we can refer. Okay, so within the class we are using, right? So we no need to declare even class name also. Okay, even we can declare without class name also. Now let's see, all cases it will display the value. Anyway, we can refer it with object, without object, with class. With the three ways we can refer of static variables. Okay, that's what the meaning of this one. Next part. Yeah, see, we can access the static variables directly from both the instance as well as static areas. By using class also we can access, without class, with class, with object. So anyway we can access that static variables. Okay, already have given soon here. Now next part. Yeah. For in static variables, JVM for static variables also, JVM will provide default initialization. Okay, not only for the non-static variables, even for static variable also, it will, let's say, delete this one. Okay, default value is zero for the int variable, right? So if I'm not giving also for the static variable also, default initialization will be done by JVM. If you're not giving any value. Okay, next part. Local variables. What is mean by local variables? Till now we have discussed instance variable and static variables. Local variables means that these variables will be created inside methods. Inside methods. So sometimes if any requirement is there, so we need of some variable temporarily. Okay, then in that case this local variables will be created for a temporary purpose. Okay. Now, sometimes to meet the temporary requirement of a programmer, we can declare variables inside a method or block or constructor. Okay, anywhere. Okay, depends on the programmer requirement. Those such type of variables will called as a local variables or temporary variables. Okay, these local variables will be stored inside stack area. So as long as that method is execution, as long as the method is executing, only that time only it will be available. Not as long as the class is available. So until that it can't be available in the memory. At the time of method execution only, those variables will be available. Okay, local variables will be created while executing. Local variables will be created while executing the block only, while executing block. So let's say inside a method if I declare a variable means, as long as while executing of this block, that time only those variables will be created in the memory. Okay, once that execution is completed, automatically it will be deleted by JVM. Okay, that's what the meaning of the third point. Okay, now next. So how to create local variables means, let's say for example, take one more example. Okay, or local variables demo. Hmm. Yeah, let's say for example, first simple one will take. Yeah, now I have taken one instance variable. Okay, this is where it is available inside main method only. Okay, inside main method only it is available. Let's say if I am writing some method outside of the main method means, then I can't use of this variable inside outside of the method. Let's say public void m. Okay, m1. I have created one m1 method. If I want to use of this variable, if I want to use of this variable b here, let's say system.out.println of b means it will give error. So because the b variable cannot be a resolved means it is not my scope, it is not there in the scope of within m1. I'm not able to identify it. If I'm keeping this as outside of this method and keeping inside the class, within the class means then it is resolving. Okay, so this is where you should understood the local variable means compulsory it will be within the method only. This method, the scope of this variable is within this method as long as the method is under execution. Okay, this variable can be used. Once out of this method execution is done, then we can't use that variable and we can't access that variable out of that method. Okay. So if you want to take up one more example, let's here only first. See here within this method, so I can use of anywhere. So this b variable I am using within the method. Again inside this is a for loop. Okay, inside this for loop also I am using of int I equal to 0, I less than 1, I plus plus. This I variable is available within this for loop only, and we can't use this out I variable outside of this for loop also. Okay, let's try that. It will give off the error is like let's say run it. I variable is not, so that it will show the error. See, I cannot be resolved as a variable. Okay, line number it will show also. See, in this we are using a phi. So the scope of the I variable is within for loop only. Okay, the scope of this b variable is within method, within, just assume of this curly braces. You can take it. The value, the scope of this I variable is within this curly brace only. Within this curly brace, we can't use outside of that for loop. Okay, that we are declared inside for loop, that we need to use within the for loop only, we can't use out of that for loop. This what, now for local variables JVM won't provide default value. Okay, this also the important point. Compulsory we should perform initialization explicitly before using that variable. Let's say here if I am removing this value equal to 10. Okay, let's remove this one. Now see here it is giving of error. B should be if I am trying to use of this variable. So before case default initialization will be done by JVM. For local variables default initialization is not applicable. The default initialization is, see, the local variable b may not have been initialized with the value. Okay, compulsory we should initialize that value. Okay, let's say if I'm removing that, it won't give any error. I'm not using, just only declared. If you are using that somewhere, then compulsory we should be initialized with some value. Okay, that is compulsory. Even here I declared, so in some other line b equal 20 if I am giving. Okay, here I initialized before using. In the line number 18 I am using b value. Okay, b variable. In the sixth line number 6 I am initialized with value. In the line number 5 I declared. So compulsory we should declare, we should initialize that value with some value before going to use that variable inside local variables. Okay, so use of local variables compulsory we should initialize with some value. The JVM will not assign any default values to the local variables. That's what the meaning of this one, this point. Okay, yeah, these are the instance variables, static variables and local variables. Is it clear guys? Maybe you need to listen once again, and if any doubt is there, tomorrow class we'll discuss it for some time. Is it okay guys? Yeah. Normally we'll use of these names is like local variable, instance variable, static variable, like that, reference variable, primitive variables, like that. The names are terminology is most will be used. So if it is a local variable means we should think like yes we will use this local variables within the method. If it is a instance variable means within the class and outside the methods. If it is a static variable means static variables are the variables within the class with some keyword will be available for those variables and methods. It is a static keyword. Okay, then we should think it is a static variables and static methods, static whatever that anything methods or variables or blocks or constructors anything. Okay, yeah, that's what for today's class, guys. I'll give off this document, please go through this, and then we'll go for tomorrow. We'll see where are methods, where are the types, okay, variable arguments. Okay, guys, tomorrow we'll see. If any doubt is there, so tomorrow 5 to 10 minutes we'll discuss if any doubt is there. If no doubts, then we can proceed with where archetypes. Okay, thank you, guys. We'll meet tomorrow. Yeah.